Hello again, TJ Schwartz here. You're listening to the Edge and Flow podcast. I'm with my co-host, Lucas Burnley. Sounds like you've got a lot going on in the shop. I wanted to ask you about it.
Dude, I've got a lot. I feel like I've got a lot going on everywhere right now.
Yeah.
This has been an interesting cycle. The shop stuff is kind of a byproduct, which has been really interesting. We've talked a little bit about like how there's areas where I'm like, I don't know what the next carrot is. I'm not sure like what I'm going for or what the goal is. And recently we had like a life change of my father coming to live with us, right? He's 84, needs like pretty active care. And so this has been like basically this last month, like you and I went up to Portland. We got back 3 days later. I split for New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Got back from that. And basically I have been getting my dad situated and getting ready for the USN show down in Vegas, while also doing what I seem to do, which is like way overthink every element of like my life constantly.
Same.
Yeah. But a really interesting thing happened. And at first I was like looking at it, I'm like, man, I have no time. And where we were already like, we had some constraints around like the kids and just like, and I, like self-imposed stuff of trying to be like a good dad and partner and everything. And then adding in another level. And the first couple days just being like terrified because I'm like, now I have these other random things, new appointments, new care. Like I got to go in and like kind of check on them, get my dad food, like that kind of stuff, and like hang out with him throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like no other way to say this, but it like pulled back a layer of bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is very akin to like when I got married and when we had Bo. There is like a refining process of clarity. And what I realized was that like all of these things that I was trying to do around the business kind of for myself are actually not the priority at the moment. And what the priority is, essentially is to make the amount of money that I need to make into the shortest amount of time with the least amount of steps in the most repeatable manner on a monthly basis.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a huge wave of relief that came from that.
Yeah. Like a narrower focus and a little bit of a liberty with that.
Yeah. It's strange because like, I think I always have like one foot out the door kind of on like projects and stuff. Like I get to a point and I'm like ready for the next thing. And there's been times where we've had employees where I'm running pretty efficiently and we're doing like, a certain type of production and being really consistent with like running sci-pops and like, polys and little like the pocket stuff. And what I realize is like right now, I actually just need to give myself the space to do that. I think that there is an unanticipated side effect though, right? Which is I have been trying to like update systems and like make these like big jumps in like my CAD platform and like how I produce a knife. And I was already having a hard time like getting that amount of time. Like we've talked about that quite a bit. Like the deep dive work is hard. And what I'm seeing is that by doing this schedule and forcing myself essentially into the process of repetition and productivity, there's micro improvements that are able to happen consistently. And I think that those over a similar timeline are actually going to yield much more growth.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed it when I was like running this last batch of Cypops. I was just making little tweaks to the cam. And then through that, I started to like see some areas where I could improve my fixturing. I can't do it right now, but I took the notes, had the idea, took the notes, and it's something that I can come back to. And if I'm being efficient, there will be points for me to make that type of adjustment versus designing something completely new and new fixturing and new process all at one time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's weird, man. Like there's like these moments where you have like it's like freedom through constraints.
Yeah. No, I
Right?
know exactly what you're saying for sure. Yeah, there's my dad says all the time, it's like creativity and productivity don't exist well in chaos,
Yeah.
even though creativity is often linked to chaos. And
Yeah.
I think that's like a misnomer. I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
I think the constraints it's a scaffolding that is important. I feel that.
I would 100% agree. I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, Josh Warner, who's the owner of Good Art. It's a Good Art Hollywood is a jewelry company.
Mm-hmm.
I've always used him as like a creative kind of like just essentially someone I really look up to because they're very productive, but he's also like always building really cool stuff and like very creative. And I was telling him about this process that I was working, and there was like kind of like he was quiet for a minute, and he was like, "Hey," I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Congratulations." He's like, "What you're describing is," he's like, "essentially the way that you were trying to force that work is you as like a 25-year-old novice." He's like, "The way that you're working right now is a professional."
Hmm.
My brain would have never put it together that way. But when he said it, I realized it because it's like there is a point where just doing the work, being consistent, like not always having to have it be like the most exciting new thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think is pretty valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, there's truth to that. And there's, it's cool to hear. I mean, it's like we were talking on the phone when you had the laser running and the CNC running at the same time, and you were tell me about that.
Yeah.
Or
So
tell them about that.
well, and it's interesting. So different types of work, you are able to essentially group, right, in different ways. So we've talked about this, like how many balls can you keep up in the air, like how many areas of focus. And so this particular day, I was running like third op on Cypops, which is a 10-minute cycle time. In that 10 minutes, I was like, well, what should I do? I was like, all right, well, I know that I have a bunch of CRKT squids that I want to laser roses on. I'm going to start that. It's a 3-minute cycle time. So I'm like, okay, I can do 3 squids in the time that I'm running one Cypop.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I have a 3-minute cycle time on the laser. And I was like, what else can I do? And I'm like, oh, I need to disassemble SQDs so that I can start doing some mods on those. It was crazy. It was like a perfect cycle. I would go down, start the machine, come back up, start the laser, start disassembling knives, swap my parts, machine buzzer goes off, go change the parts. It's not necessarily like if it was every day, all day for the next year, it'd be pretty rough.
Mm-hmm.
But in this concept of doing efficient work with the goal of not making every week out of the month efficient, but like, hey, can I get what I need done inside of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then have that third week to kind of work on pushing those longer term projects forward. Dude, it was amazing. And I enjoyed it so much. And like at the end of the day, I had lasered like 50 knives, disassembled, I think like 18. And this is like disassembly all the way down to part screws, everything organized, ready for like refinishing. and machined a whole bunch of Cypops.
Nice.
And it felt good.
It is. I found that to be also an amazing feeling when you find two processes that fit together like Legos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's some processes that can't share time, like it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But then you find a couple where they really fit together, and we've noticed that in our shop. There's a couple things, and we've talked about it. It's like when you're doing this, always also do this. Just if you find yourself doing the one thing, like by default, blend it with the other thing.
Yeah.
And then just kind of, it's like a package deal. It's like there's like segments of processes that are bunched together in that way. And I love that. That's cool.
Well, you think about it like systems. And this came up. So like I'm still doing the business coaching stuff, which interesting. This like ties into conversations I've had with Terrence, but also my accountant around like, how do I value time and money and where do I focus? Right. And this like is fitting in with things that they're both saying, which is pretty cool. But we discussed this yesterday and he's like, all right, he's like, this is essentially the way, he's like, the way that day worked for you. That can be a week, that can be a month, it can be a year. He's like figuring out the interlocking systems and how much time to devote to each one of those. He's like, that's how you can push your projects forward without relying on like arbitrary like muse and energy. It's like, it's like levers. You're like, okay, this work is done. You move on to the next thing. So, and it's interesting because you look at like the constraint. So the constraint that I have is time, but also the realization that all of my relationships now require more input. So with my father coming in to live with us, that's an added strain on Maddie. So I need to be able to be more present for her and like a more active partner. Same with the kids. So it's not just the added work of having like another person to care for. It's now caring for the other people in the system more.
Yeah.
And that, I think, looking like it's so clear. It's like a clarifying event where you look at it and you're like, okay, what is really important? It's, what it feels like? Do you ever have like a route? You like know a route you're driving and you like to go the route. But if you had to go somewhere fast, you wouldn't take that route.
Right.
It's kind of what it feels like. Like, I'm like, oh, this is like a quick route. Like, this is good. I used to do this all the time when I was delivering pizza, and you have something that's a rush. You're like, intuitively, in that moment that wasn't the fastest route. It feels very similar to that, where I'm like, there was some like freedom around decisions that just there wasn't enough clarity.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing how pressure and stress works. It's like a medicine you have to take. Too much of it is very, very damaging, but not enough is bad too.
Yeah.
It's like, that's been a difficult process for me to find that right amount, because I do better under more pressure than less as a general rule. But I have, followed that to its, extreme and had too much pressure, too much stress numerous times.
Yeah.
It's a fun game.
Dude, it really is. I mean, this is, I don't know, this is like the ongoing kind of struggle too. I tied to this, I was looking, I'm like, all right, I know that I work best very early in the morning. Okay. And I work well until a point, and then I just start to lose like steam, essentially. Like I start to lose focus. I start to lose like the drive. But I also have I know that I've been making my days really open-ended. So a lot of times I'll go into the shop at 5:30, but I won't leave the shop until 6. And I was looking at it, I'm like, the last few hours of the day, they are not productive. So what I'm going to do in this like time where like I realize I need to give more time is I'm going to put like a hard stop on my day. So if I'm in the shop working at 5:30, basically what I do is I go out at 5:30, I work. At about 7:30, I go in, I have breakfast with the kids, help get them off to school. Now I'm doing some stuff with my dad around that time, like get him breakfast, get him meds, stuff like that. And then I go back to the shop probably at 9. So if I do that cycle, but I leave at 2:30 or 3 p.m., I feel like I will have done all the work that I'm actually going to get done. But also I may be more efficient in that time because there's a clear cutoff, and I can't just say like, well, all right, I'll keep working on this and like get it done. It's like, no, you have to be done by 2:30.
Yeah.
The next effect that has is I think that actually finishing at 2:30, I like pull back some of my day. So I go into the evening with more energy and like ability to like show up for my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like all these things kind of linking where I'm like, why did I not see that before?
I agree completely, dude. That's a good idea. We had a similar concept that we decided to pursue recently. We went to 410s. It's a different idea, but
410 is great.
One of the reasons being Friday gets chewed on by things, everything, appointments, or because it's a weekday, so you can still use it for like dentist or whatever. I'm always trying to figure out like, when the heck am I going to mow the lawn? When am I going to do this? It's like Friday ends up being our grab bag of like, oh, we got to do this. We got to go to Costco. Like, we'll just do it on Friday. And it just becomes this catch-all, and it leaves Saturday and Sunday less cluttered with like the tedious stuff like that.
Right.
And so it's like, it's a work day in a weird way, but it's like a family work day. It's like, okay, we really needed to like finish caulking the bathroom. Like, that's going to be this Friday's project. And so we've implemented that. We've been doing it for a couple weeks, and Dalton was happy to go to 410s, and like rearranging the time. I think the 5 8-hour days are like 5 fullish days. I don't know. I could see where there's industries and businesses where that makes more sense, but we really like a different system. And with you, what you're doing is like, you're, instead of front loading at the beginning of the week, you're front loading at the beginning of the day.
Right.
Which is the same idea though.
I know that I will get I get up and out of bed while everyone is asleep. And what I do is I've been trying to do this thing where I do water before food, food before coffee. So that's what I do. Like, I get up, I do athletic greens. So I do that, and I just go straight to the shop. But when I come back in, I have my first cup of coffee. And I'm just noticing it's like, if you start off in the right way, and you get like hooked in, it makes everything after that point easier. I spend a lot of time, like if I get lost in the process, that's where I'm going to lose a lot of time. Some of this too, I'm like realizing around like neurodivergence and like ADHD stuff. I think I sent you a video yesterday from, what is it? The company that makes those rad buckles, like little CNC shop. Okay. And they were like, we take the first hour of every morning and we use that time to make like shop improvements and system improvements. And as soon as I read it, I knew that I would never be able to do that, because for me to do that, I have to get focused enough into that one job, and hours enough for me to lock in, that it would tank anything else that I wanted to do. On the flip side, I can do it at the end of the day. And so I actually started to like implement that, where I'm like, oh man, end of the day, I'm losing steam. I'm going to go, like yesterday, I just ran a blast, like an air nozzle off of my sandblast cabinets so that I can dust parts off like in the grinding room when I'm there. And I plumbed it in, and I'm like, I left work feeling like, man, I got all my work done, but I also made an improvement. And I'm seeing that a lot of these like concepts and systems that we hear and see in usage I think a lot of times it's the information is 100% right. Like you're like, that is an awesome system. I'm finding that for myself, a lot of times it's figuring out how to apply it for myself. That is that's the tricky part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that's a good thought.
You
The
know?
1 hour of system improvement.
It was pretty good. And they're, I mean, I can't think of what the name of the company is now. Like right on the tip of my tongue. They're very systems oriented. And they're doing like lights out machining and stuff and you know, kind of creating systems to like check all the tools and doing probing and just an interesting, like someone in there has a background in like systems engineering probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but I just right now I feel like all of these things are kind of linked in a way where the ability to be efficient essentially, or like very thoughtful with your time is really good to do ahead of the time that you actually need it.
Yeah.
And life continues. Yeah. It's like preventative. It's like it's just budgeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're creating like an emergency fund of time. Well, I mean, like we were talking about that a little bit. Like we went on family vacation, home for 3 days, went to Portland, home for 3 days, went to New Mexico. I'm like, I haven't worked in the shop in like close to a month. But systems that I had put in place many years ago allowed that to not be like, you know, catastrophic.
Yeah. Yeah. Prevented it from causing a domino effect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like what that like simplified down to like a question that is really valuable is like, what are you doing today for like you in the future?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that us in the future is like a super like weird concept. Because you look and you're like, well, okay, so like there's 40-year-old TJ. Do you know who that dude is?
It's a great question.
Do you know what's important to him? Like
that's
anything that you can do now that when you get to 40-year-old TJ and you're like, I'm so glad 30-year-old TJ did this.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to like, I think right now, like I'm so focused on the kids. That's like the biggest one where I'm like, when I'm 50, what am I going to look back on and be like, I did that wrong? Or I'm really glad that I prioritized this versus, you know, like, I don't know, like Paper Chase or whatever.
Yeah. No, yeah. With the kids, that's like undeniable with that one, you know, can't get that time back.
Can't get it back.
Yeah.
I had this like coaching stuff. One of the exercises was to write yourself. Yeah, it was 2 options. You could either write your own obituary or you could write yourself a letter from the future. And I did that one. And that was actually pretty intense. Weird to sit and write. So I wrote it. I essentially wrote myself a letter from 2037, which is like Bo going to college.
Mm-hmm.
Winston would be like 17, Bo would be going to school. And I wrote myself a letter and it was a trip.
That's insane, dude. I'd never thought about it that way. I got to try that. That's pretty intense.
We'll go into it more for sure.
That's an intense prompt.
It was, dude, I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to do it every year.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like 2 parts where one, I was kind of like writing myself a letter to like visualize what I would want at that point. Okay. So I'm like talking about the good things that's going on. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like telling myself that like, oh, Bo's headed off to school. He's super excited. Like we just got back from like a month in Spain or whatever, you know, just like some fun stuff. Talk about my relationship with Maddie, like talk about the business. And then I was like, I have like a couple pointers that I want, or like a couple thoughts I want to leave you with. And it's super weird, man. It's like all advice that I feel like I needed to hear, but is like self-generated.
Yeah.
I know this is like
Yeah.
heady and
No.
weird, but
I can understand that. No, that's interesting.
it's like pulling at your own like sub database.
Well, it's like asking you to unveil the denial that you have. You know what I mean? It's like, because it's like right now you can deny something, but 10 years from now you're going to look back and you know that you'll be feeling the consequences of that denial.
Yeah.
But right now the denial is beneficial enough that you maintain it.
Yeah.
But it's like 10 years from now, I would have advised myself to not be in denial.
Dude, yeah, it was weird. Yeah. It was weird. Yeah, I just titled it Letter to Self, and like I just wrote, and I'm like, that was cool. So there's been this last like couple months, man. It's wild how kind of growth or changes happen in these like spurts. Another one, like just like the conversation with Josh, was another friend that I really look up to from Cape, visited us. Super talented machinist. Like he's got 2 sons. He's got a great business, like great family, just great, right? And he's like probably early 60s. I was kind of telling him like what I was doing and like some of kind of what I was struggling with a little bit. He was like, look, your focus right now, he's like, you can come back to the work. He's like, I know this seems like this type of growth and like these things seem like the most important. He's like, I work too much when my kids are little. And I will always know that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, he's like, you're spending the time in the right place. And it's like, sometimes just hearing it from someone else is so nice, just as like an affirmation or like,
yeah,
I don't know. So it feels like somehow all of these different elements have like kind of come into play as the situation is actually changing. And it's been pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're having it work out as a growth experience, and that's awesome. No, I mean, that
was a lot. That was like that was a big update, but
yeah, no, I love it, dude. There's a lot of nuggets in there. I'm already chewing on it. I need to take some notes.
I thought you would like the letter one for some reason. That like
I love that.
The obit like didn't stick when I did it. Yeah. I started to like work on it. I'm like, I can't see that far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But I can really see
10 years for sure.
10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that probably at this point and like this age, 10 years is like a pretty reasonable goal just to like just to make it there.
Mm-hmm.
And like what you want at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so the actions you're doing now are going to directly correspond.
That's the thought. Yeah.
When you're
feels
80,
like it.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. When you're 80, like obviously some things you do now are going to be direct.
Yeah.
But they're way
too many permutations at that point.
Yeah. It's too hard to know. It's like, I want to be healthy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure people's ears are smoking now.
In a good way, I'm sure.
Hopefully in a good way. Yeah, it's a lot. Thanks for listening to that, guys. Okay, let's talk about something tangible.
What is that tangible thing?
You sent me a box the other day. I actually just posted a video of this. I am holding the first ever finished Tern.
And you have a certificate of authenticity that says so from
I do.
The manufacturer. And
it kills me because now I can't use it. It's going back in the box, man. Right. I did put it in my pocket though. So TJ has been cranking in true TJ fashion and has this fixed blade. I mean, you're good. Like you're done, right?
We're production ready on it.
You are production ready.
It's all fixtured. We've built every step of the process. We have a pile of them already machined and heat treated. And basically we got up to the point of where they're going to need laser engraved prior to finishing and where the sheath was getting ready for your review. And so I wanted to send you one to review engravings and just sort of the accessorizing of the knife. And if we're green lighted and then we're gonna be production.
Green means go. We're 100% good.
That's awesome.
So since we're doing this, let's what's the plan? Do we have a set plan yet?
So I have I do have a plan for this model as it pertains to my business.
Okay.
So I've alluded to this in the past, but one of the hardest things in my business and with my current business model is our knives are available to be ordered at any given time. You can go on my website, all of our models are there. You can custom order it. That's great. I love that. But I spoke about the metaphor of levers, like pulling levers
Yep.
that cause ebbs and flows in sales is what my game has been for months,
Yep.
if not a couple of years now. And it's been working really well. But the game of not knowing how many people are going to show up and custom order when there is no control at all. Because like if you're going to do a drop of like Cypops,
Right.
you can never like be for sure you're going to sell them all or whatever
Right.
but like that on this date you can build them by that date and you can
Right.
sell them, so you can at least have a cadence or a pattern of
Yeah.
some
And there's some
kind.
historical data. So you're like kind of making, you're like doing calculated risk, you know?
Whereas the cadence of our business is completely up to just the populace coming to the website and buying the knife. And so it's like,
Right.
we just don't know. Like, I can't tell you what the next week's going to be. I can't tell you what the next 24 hours is going to be. I have
Right.
no idea. And it's been troubling to like go to bed at night and kind of think about that and not have enough levers that I feel like I can pull to not necessarily to cause like a huge amount of sales in addition to what we're selling, but to stabilize it is the real question. So the idea with the Tern is possibly a little bit of an adjustment to the model. And that is, I still have the configurable knives. One of the things I did was come out with the signature customs, which for the first time gives me the control of some sort of drop to trigger certain amount of sales at a given time. And the Tern will be the first like inline model to be launched in a staggered way. And so like the Overland Sport, I just opened it wide open, you know, like show up, buy the knife, we'll build it. And we got through that actually today. We put a packing slip on a label on a package for a Sport. And we officially have 0 outstanding orders on the Sport,
Oh, wow.
which is a goal of ours because like we want to get production. We want to be ahead of production a little bit. And so that went really well, but it caused a massive surge when the Sport was launched and a huge distraction against all of our other models.
Yep.
This Tern, we will be dropping in batches. I'm not sure on the size, I'm not sure on the frequency, but we will be controlling the release in a staggered way that spreads that out and doesn't distract us from other models and gives us some predictability.
Consistency.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That is, it's good on two fronts because, okay, you have the consistency, but it also it doesn't over leverage your time. I guess in a lot, that's like what I'm trying to do with some of the simple products that I'm working on, where I'm like, okay, you deserve this much of my month. Full stop. And then it's after that, it changes. I love that as a model.
Oh, I appreciate it. And part of why I'm doing it on this model is I'm anticipating an influx of people who are in your sphere, that are going to be like newly introduced to my business, and allowing them to flow in at a like controlled pace. Is part of it too. And so the word I've been using is like laminate. So I'm like laminating the Tern on top of the existing business model as like a stabilizer.
Oh, I love that.
So the existing model will still be heavily fluctuating, but at least the bottom is not 0 anymore. The bottom is this amount of turns that we're planning to drop. You know what I mean?
Dude, that brings up a whole another like concept kind of that has been in my mind lately, which is like all or nothingism, where you look at, you're like, all right, new model, like I'm going to shift everything, like we need to do this, whatever, versus, or like making every model run efficiently versus like, all right, I'm going to do this one thing. It's going to be efficient. Like, or 80, it's like Pareto's law, 80-20, right? Like you're going to start off and like 20% of your things are going to be efficient, but just realizing that like anything that creates stability, even if it's only 5% of the overall, is still valuable. It's just, we're small enough that it's so easy to want to try to like make everything work better.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Or fit it all into one system.
Yep.
So that seems like, from a diversification standpoint, that seems like a very good move. And maybe for you, for products moving forward, it's almost like you have just different bins where like, this product would be really, really hard to work in this way, or you don't want to for some reason. And then you're like, okay, this allows us to make X amount per month, every month, as a baseline.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Another thing about the Tern is, so we won't be offering Cerakote in the initial phases of this.
Okay.
There are troubles with Cerakoting a knife that doesn't have scales.
Yep.
For obvious reasons, Cerakote is paint. If you're going to hold an object to paint it, you have to hold it somewhere. And if there is no somewhere that can be later covered with something, you're going to get artifacts from hanging this thing for painting.
So here's a weird question. This is just brain. Has anyone done like magnetic paint? Like, obviously it only works on steel.
Right.
But could you suspend an object with magnetism?
You probably could. I've talked to the Cerakoter, not specifically about that. The only concern I have is like, you are blowing air at it, and it would probably be...
It would move.
Spinning.
Yeah. But it would spin, and you would count. Yeah, that would go into your like.
Yeah,
I don't know. It would be cool. It's a cool video if a Cerakoter's listening.
That'd be pretty epic. I do want to talk to him about that, because I have a few ideas, kind of like, and I'm sure he would have a few ideas. But long story short, the initial offerings are not going to offer Cerakote for that reason, because we just don't have a solution yet.
Yeah.
And then secondly, the configurability on this knife is going to be all in the sheath to start. So all the colors and eyelets and things that I do are going to be available for the sheath for the Tern. So like, when it goes up for ordering, it'll just be, magna cut, stone wash, and then configure your sheath.
Yep.
And so that's the game plan.
It's pretty fun. I am excited for the Tern with you. A few reasons. A couple of those are, though, that it's actually, you and I talk about production collaboration so much, and we have a lot of theories around things that work and why they work, and like things that we wish we could try.
Mm-hmm.
This model, in my head, I see areas where I'm like, oh, I think I could mod this, I could add this feature, where it'll be interesting to see, like, if this does really well, if there's a model extension, like what we do with that model extension. And then I just love it, because this is literally, as a knife, this is as simple as you can start with. So like, anything we did after this point would be like kind of adding to it, or adding a feature, or adding scales, or like whatever it is. And where does that make sense, and where does it not? I think those are going to be fun conversations.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
I'm
really
psyched to carry this thing.
Well,
I dropped a video today, and I was like, this was kind of, it's like an EDC pairing knife, and like, I don't know, a lot of people are going to get it if you're in like the more tactical side, but dude, that is like super efficient food prep, but also just nice to use.
Like a fisherman's knife, dude. Because like, you don't have the scales, so you can get it all fish guts and oily, and you can just wash it off. It's magna cut. It's got that tiny little tip. It's got the right blade shape. Like, you could do some light filleting with that. I think it's a great outdoorsman's companion, even hunting, skinning.
Yeah, kind of just like camp kitchen / just pocket knife. Oh, dude, I'm excited. I love the fixed blade, like kind of the smaller form factor fixed blades, I think have so much range. It's because they're like very approachable, One
thing I wanted to point out, we'll just talk about it, just getting into like the production of this knife. One of the things we've discovered is, all of my other knives, we just pull one knife out of production that's been heat treated, and we turn it into a sheath block knife. And so it gets lost from production, but it's just turned into a mule for like making sheaths. So we did the same exact thing with this knife, but the difference that we didn't think about was, if we were pulling all these knives out of production prior to tumbling, so they're just like heat treated. And all the other knives, most of the engagement of the sheath is on the handle. And that's what's preventing movement, is like engagement on the G10. And what we do on those, on all the other knives, is the G10 we machine the scales for that mule to be 5 thou thinner than our actual handles,
Yeah.
so that you expand the sheath 10
Yep.
thou and it creates a spring.
Yep.
We don't have that on this. And in addition to that, it not being tumbled as the mule knife
Yep.
meant that all of the internal chamfers in the sheath were perfectly sharp.
Yep.
And so you put a tumbled knife into that sheath and it doesn't actually engage in the way that
In
it
the
should.
same way. Yeah.
And so we went ahead and sent you that one, which is not a complete sheath because it has the mule being untumbled. But I believe we can solve that in short order, because we already did tumble that knife and we're going to make more sheaths and get it dialed. But there is some play in that.
Honestly, having messed with a lot of kydex over the years, this is still like, even with that, it's still very, very good fit.
Good.
And like retention is solid, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
it doesn't seem like it's coming out.
That to me, like, someone can tell me I'm a liar, but like, if you're a newer maker and you're building kydex, you want your sheath to do this. Like, that is showing retention, and that is showing like proper molding.
Which brings out a great point. A little side thing on the Overland Sport, we were building sheaths and all of a sudden they stopped clicking.
Ooh.
And we're like, why is it not clicking like our sheaths click? Because I agree with you, the click is what we want. And it turns out the mule for that knife, we had bolted those artificial scales on, and they're cut in half because of the way it mounts on the fixture. Now in that knife, that leaves only one screw in those scales.
Ooh.
And so one of them rotated a little tiny bit.
Yep.
And was creating a false like fit, and
Yeah.
it wasn't clicking anymore.
Yeah.
We scrapped like 25 sheaths, I think, that were complete because we were just there's no click. Like it had the retention, but I was like, I want the click.
I should like explain that more. The click doesn't necessarily explain proper engagement. Like just because you get a click doesn't mean the sheath is functioning properly. But a sheath that is functioning properly, in my experience and opinion, that click really shows that your engagement point is functioning correctly. It shows that your eyelets are in the right location. It shows that there's like the right amount of like spring essentially in the sheath for it to function.
Yep. And also
it's not just like wedgie pressure.
Yeah. And in use, it's also beneficial because I mean, I'm sure anyone that's carried a kydex, belt knife, they've noticed where like every once in a while you won't get it all the way in there on the first go. Like maybe your shirt goes into there with it. Yep. And you don't hear the click and you immediately are aware that you didn't get it fully sheathed. Yep. And the click is like an audible alarm that's like engaged, locked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just makes you feel confident, I guess.
Right. I just imagine somebody being like, yeah, but when you're an operator, you want your sheath silent. That's when you thumb it. You thumb it real soft.
But if you're putting your knife in the sheath, you already stabbed the guy, so you're probably good.
Done.
Yeah.
Fast twitch muscle.
Yeah.
Take it out fast. Won't matter.
Yeah.
Dude. Okay. So that is like all of the kind of like basic updates on the Tern, but we're ready to launch. Dude, that was fast. I'm very excited.
It was, it felt quick, but it was slow to me.
I'm sure it did.
The Sport was actually significantly faster from like initial design to completion, but
totally
this one was bouncing between other projects a little bit longer.
Yeah. Well, and it's a different, like you had to do a different type of fixturing. There were things that you had to rethink where the Overland Sport, it's still in that family.
Yeah.
Right.
And that knife stayed straight through heat treat, which was the first hurdle.
That was the hurdle. That was the one thing where I was asking, like, how is this going to work?
Yeah.
Because the tip is so fine.
Stayed straight. So you put that thing on the table and feel how straight it is.
Dude, I already did. I did it with a height gauge.
And
it's real straight.
It's real straight. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. Like that was surface ground prior to heat treat, bevel ground prior to heat treat, milled into a skeleton and then heat treated. So yeah, it's been going really well on that. It's
impressive.
Front. And so that was one of the hoops. Another hoop is the holes. I was worried about the stones in my tumbler getting stuck in. Yep. I only tumbled 2 knives and of the Terns. Neither of them had any stones stuck in them.
Okay.
So that's a plus. And then
That's
also the one other thing that I'm noticing, I may not have a solve for immediately, is I leave a tab for tumbling on the tip of the blade to not round the tip while tumbling. A lot of makers do that. This knife, because of the grind being so thin, like we're at like 9 or 10 thou on the thickness prior to sharpening, and the tip is so fine, the actual tab is limited in its size before the grind just takes it to 0 thickness.
Right.
And so the thicker the edge, the bigger the tab can be before it is 0 thickness at the edge. The tab is so small on that knife, and we're limited in that way, that it's at the very cusp of not sharpening out and actually the round over kind of appearing. And so we're right on the like bleeding edge of what we could do edge thinness wise and still tumble it.
Yeah.
But it did work. So I'm just going to be watching that closely.
Yeah. Just one more thing to
worst
check out.
case scenario, I think our only option is to go like 2 thou thicker on the edge, but that would only be in like an emergency if that is a big problem. Because I don't see how the tab could be bigger. It just just naturally the way it's built. It's just how it is.
Well, and I mean, if it's running well now, even if it's really, really close, I mean, hopefully that continues to just hold.
Yeah.
Because it's perfect. I noticed how thin the edge on this was, and it's like, for this knife, it's ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. I love thin edges. We went to 10 thou on that. We went to 10 thou on the Sport. We went to 10 thou, or I think we're at like 12 to 12, 13 on the Overland. So we're just thin on everything. Yeah.
That's good, man. All right. That's very exciting. First project.
Heck yeah.
Feels good.
It does feel good. And I'm excited to post a picture, because now that you've approved it, I was hesitant to post a picture because if you were going to want the laser engraving moved around or something, then I didn't want the picture. So I will post a picture probably today.
Do it, man. I think this is awesome. Yeah, I posted in the Facebook group, and I posted on Instagram. Just like a quick little.
I haven't seen it yet.
It was hard. I got it last night, and I was like, I want to open it, but I also don't. I just want to record it. I never do unboxing videos, and I always think they're cool. So I did one. So my version of one anyway.
Nice. Good stuff.
All right, man. So we got my shop. Tern, what's going on in your shop?
So I mentioned 410s. We went to 410s. Just a couple little things we were chasing down. One of them was we scrapped some sheaths. Not a big deal. I think that was last week. Is what it is. Luckily, Kydex is not that expensive.
Caught it. Yep. Caught it. Saved it.
Actually, Dalton caught it, and he just noticed that had moved. And then we started checking the fit. And then we're like, none of these are clicky. I was torn because it's like they were so functional still, but I was like, it's just not the same.
Right.
We threw them out. But the other thing was we've been cruising on the Sports. Like I said, we did a big push of Sports to try to meet demand and exceed it. We are producing some for retailers that are finished actually today, sending some to Germany to Knife Lounge.
I love that.
Which is awesome. Maxi over there.
Maxi.
We linked up at Blade Show. So I've got them in a box behind me. We're getting the UPS set up to take that. And then things have been going well in the shop. The one thing we may have talked about it on the pod before that we know of, but we've been struggling with a little bit, is that if your blast media gets contaminated by blasting too much steel, it will discolor your G10. That's bright color G10. And so because we blast all the knives and all the scales, we have to replace the media frequently enough where that doesn't become an issue. The solve is to have 2 cabinets. Only way to do that is we need to build like an exterior shed that would house the vacuum and our compressor.
Got it.
So we've got a plan to do that and possibly end up bringing in another cabinet to just kill this issue.
Probably just throw a Kaiser out there.
Yeah, I know. That's facts. Yeah, for sure.
So let me ask you this: what blast cabinet do you use?
It's a TP Tools is the brand that sells it. They're on the East Coast somewhere. It's Scat Blast.
Oh, Scat Blast. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm super happy. American made. It was really reasonably priced for
what are those. What are those priced out at?
So it with a vacuum and the full cabinet is like $900.
Oh, that's great.
$950 American made.
You've seen mine, right? I use the Trinkos.
Yep.
The T20s. I love them. I've got 2 of those. I've got one running Zerblast, one running like a silicon carbide.
Yeah.
I actually made a change to it today. So I don't know if your vac system, Trinco uses this weird, like, imagine a shower cap made of like flannel, essentially. That's like the filter that they run inside of their little vacuum
canister.
Yeah, inside of the canister. It loads super fast, and as your media breaks down and dusts more, it breaks down. It loads really fast, right? I think they say you're supposed to change them like every 4 months. Mine do not last 4 months.
No,
Okay,
ours neither.
So I was like, man, I'm gonna just try plugging in my little DeWalt shop vac. The DeWalt's actually got too much vacuum.
Sucks all your media out.
But it pulls hard. And because there's a bag in there, it doesn't load the filter. So today I took my Trinco apart and I added a DeWalt filter bag off of the port. And I feel ridiculous because I've been running these for a decade.
No kidding.
And I haven't come up with that solution, and it works perfectly.
No kidding. Well, it's way more surface area from as far as a filtration surface goes.
Yep.
More surface area is always better.
Yep.
That's smart.
So I left the little filter in there, added the bag. So now it's like double filtration, but the bag will not restrict airflow. What happens is that filter starts to load and the airflow just gets cut, I would say, by 2/3. And so you have two options. Either I blast apart and wait for a minute for the cabinet to clear, or I blast apart and hold my breath as I open the cabinet and a bunch of dust comes out. So like this hopefully will solve that. With the vac, it's like I'm done blasting. I open the door. There's nothing. It's crystal clear inside.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we definitely need to invest in better solutions. We don't have huge problems with that, but it is pretty frequent. But we have in the canister, it's got a filter that's like like a K&N air filter, how it's like a cylinder.
That's like standard vacuum style.
But it's like pretty big. I mean, it's probably like 10-inch diameter by like 10 inches tall or something. And what we've been doing is we have a backup filter, but we've just been taking it out. Yeah. And we'll go like put a mask on, go beat it in our trash can and like blow it out. And we've reused it for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like shop vac style. That works better. Yeah. I'm pretty interested. There's separators. I've always been curious about the separators where you can actually reclaim the lost media.
I installed one.
How does that work?
Doesn't seem to work really at all. Only my reasoning on it is I think so because of the discoloration issues. So you had recommended silicon carbide. I tried it once, loved it on steel. It is my favorite. Yep. But it completely is unusable on like brightly colored G10.
Right.
Because it literally just embeds basically black carbide into it's ruined. So I immediately had to pivot from that with only one cabinet. And the media we use now is because we're replacing it so often to keep it fresh. I'm going on the cheaper end, which is just aluminum oxide white. Yep. And it's more dusty than your average media, which I don't like. But I think almost everything that's leaving through the vacuum is like so fine that it's not stopping in the collector and it's going all the way to the vacuum. Yeah. And so I'll try to drain and like reclaim media and nothing really comes out.
You just get dust.
Yeah. It just goes all the way through.
That's another, man, as I was running the laser and I was messing with parameters on the laser and I was doing like anneal passes for coloration. And then I was doing deep engraving, some SQDs, and just realizing like what a deep hole it is as far as like learning. Dude, tumbling, sandblasting, everything that we do, there is a level that you can take your understanding of it to like a just crazy nth degree.
Yeah.
To truly understand like blasting media and like where the applications are, what your pressures are, what nozzle sizes, what nozzle materials. Like there's so much that can be like tweaked.
It's almost like painstaking in the beginning.
It's true.
I think we went through like 3 or 4 different medias and 3 different nozzles, different diameters. Yeah. Now we have a sticker on there that has like different pressures for steel versus G10.
Oh, interesting. That's super smart.
Yeah. Cause we've noticed that you want higher pressure on G10 because you're trying to texture it a little bit. And you want to just do it fast. You don't want to sit there all day.
What pressure do you run steel at?
like basically as low as we can go where the siphon is still working.
Oh, interesting.
And so we're at like 40. I think we go a little lower. But the lower you go in pressure, the less media you get in a siphon setup. So it's like it's actually just a race against wanting a low pressure, but not wanting it to take too long.
Right.
And if there are better, nicer cabinets out there that can go way lower in pressure and
because
not lose,
they're pressurized.
Yep.
Right.
They're direct pressure as opposed to a siphon.
Got
Because
it.
what you're essentially creating in a siphon is a vacuum. Like
Right.
the airflow is creating a vacuum. If you have low airflow, you have a low vacuum. It's going to draw less media. And so the reason being is I don't want porous steel because I don't want anything that could promote rust.
Right.
And in the beginning, I was running a lot higher pressure because it makes better, more efficient blasting.
Yep.
And I noticed it did promote corrosion more than like a finer blast.
Yeah.
And so even without changing the grit of the media, you can way reduce the porosity with the lower pressure.
Yeah.
And so that's what
it's
we're doing.
It's a good argument for experimentation in general.
Mm-hmm.
You know, play with your pressures.
Yeah.
Like it's the same with tumbling where you're like, you can do pre-tumbling or you can go. I mean, if you think about a part, you have dimensional change, right? So if you use a coarse media and you leave a part in too long, it can change it. But you should also theoretically be able to take a part to a mere finish with like little geometric or, like dimensional change. But that process starts to get more and more refined.
Yeah.
It's like, what finish do you go in at? What are your stages? What are your times? What are your like compounds that you're using? Dude, it's a lot.
Speaking on this, we had a absolute head scratcher pop up this week, and we tried to solve it and failed. And then this morning, actually, I had the realization of what it was. So we had a batch of Overland Sports come out, and you could see the jimping from another knife on the flat of the neck of like another knife.
Okay.
And in my head, I was like, it looks like it's either like hard water or corrosion because when we come out, we wash them and we stack them and then we're oiling them.
Okay.
And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, they sat there too long next to each other and they like oxidized against each other or something happened where one basically imprinted on the other. And what we did is the next batch, I would pull one knife out of the tumbler, dip it in soap water, hand it to Dalton. He would blow it off, oil it. And so we were just doing a little chain and got them all out one by one.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of them still had that. And I was like, okay, well, they never touched each other after the tumbler. And I'm like, when were they stacked against each other before that? And what we have been doing blasting is we'll stack like 5 of them and blast the perimeter and then blast them one by one as far as that.
Oh, yeah.
And there was enough fanning in your hand where you're blasting the perimeter that the blast was getting double blasted along the shadow of the next blade over. And it was deep enough that it would show up after tumble.
Dude, that's wild.
Yeah. It took us like a day and a half for that light bulb to go on of like, because we were starting to think like, okay, maybe at heat treat, they're stacking
layering the blasting,
and then it's like too soft in that one spot, so it blasts deeper. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're double blasting it. We're blasting a shadow of the next knife onto the other knife. So now, 2 options: we either blast them totally individually and we don't blast the perimeters together, which is slower, or we just have to run like an end mill through the holes so that when you blast the perimeter, there's no chance of throwing a shadow because they're perfectly stacked.
Right. Yeah, or you do spacers, or you do like there's a bunch of ways to do that if it's more efficient. Yeah.
Or you do the Chris Reeve method where you literally have like a wheel. And
dude, that method is cool.
Yeah. They like spin a wheel with knives on it and like blast in one spot and like it's like a lathe.
And then flip them.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
At least they do that on the handle scales. I can't say I saw it on the blades, but for sure on handles.
Yep. Pretty cool.
Sorry if I just gave.
Pretty sure that's in the video.
Oh, good. Good.
That's like old school. For those of you guys who haven't seen that, if you want to see like inside of a really cool company, but also at a specific point in time, what was it, like Exquisite Edge or something like that? Like it's like Exquisite Edge does Chris Reeve's knives. I think it was like maybe like an Asian.
It's like a 45-minute
Yeah,
tour.
it was awesome.
I think Blade HQ has an old one too, like an old one.
Yeah, super fun to watch.
Chris Reeves got awesome stuff going on over there for sure.
It's nice.
But
dude,
yeah, so we've been chasing down like a couple little things that have popped up in production that nothing like total nightmare situation, just like, little quality things controlling. As always, I try to live in a mental space where this is just a normal thing.
Yeah.
I think trying to squash all problems and just expect them to go away forever is a fool's errand.
Nope.
And as soon as you do that is when you start shipping knives on accident that are bad because you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a few little things, nothing crazy, but we are about next week we are going to be finishing, like, actually stoning and tumbling Tern's full production.
Oh, wow.
So
okay,
that'll be good.
So if you guys are not on DJ's mailing list,
get on there.
We'll do it. We're going to link it. So when they're ready to drop, we'll do a newsletter on our end. We'll link over to you. This is like this is the fun stuff about collabs, is like being able to, kind of share. Yeah, cross-pollinate. That's what you want. You know, show people something cool. So
I look forward to it.
Dude, that was a fun conversation. Hopefully, so I'm headed to USN next week. So if we wanted to record, we would have to do it early in the week. If not, we'll miss one more, and then hopefully we'll just be back on
stabilized.
Because I'm gonna be a homebody for a while. That's my plan.
Cool. Well, yeah, it was a fun one. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening.
If you're still listening, we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Stay well.
Peace.
Cool. Later.